Hey guys, it's Sabrina. Thank you for clicking, and this is the first episode of Sabrina Speaks. So, thank you for joining, and I'm so excited about our chat today. So, make sure you grab a coffee, a tea, or your favorite drink, and let's get settled in. For the first episode, we are going to discuss worship isn't a performance. I picked this topic because I was a worship leader for around 10 years. And I just kind of wanted to talk about my experience and why I ended up ultimately stepping away from being a worship leader. So, the first thing I want to discuss is my passion for music. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always singing. If you're listening to this and you were my friend as a kid, you definitely know I was always singing. If you came to my house, we weren't like watching movies most of the time or we weren't playing games, we were doing karaoke. That was just kind of my idea of having fun. When I had birthday parties, I had an amazing friend that would set up speakers and everything, and we would just do karaoke all night and have such an amazing time. So ever since I could remember, since I was probably at least 8 years old, I had a microphone in my hand. I grew up singing in singing competitions, mostly because I enjoyed being on stage. There is such a thrill from being on stage, and that is something that I kind of miss. But even when I was in competitive competitions, I never really saw it as a competition. I just found it as a way for people who are passionate about the same thing, whether you sang, whether you played music and sang, or whatever your special talent was. It was something we could all come together and share our passions, and that was something I truly enjoyed as a kid. I was also chosen for All-State Choir, which was a huge deal when I was younger because only a handful of us got picked, and I was one of them, and I got to have this incredible experience with working with individuals who also had the same passion as me and loved singing, and I got to work with people who knew so much about the music industry and got to sing in a choir, and oh my gosh, it was just such an amazing experience. It was one of my favorite experiences being in middle school because if you guys know me, I later became homeschooled after junior high. So that was definitely one of my highlights of being in the public school systems. So, with that being said, I'm going to switch gears to how I started worship. So, when I was probably a little older than 10, maybe 11 or 12, I started attending a church, and I started attending a lot, and I started to get to know the music that was in our children's program at the time because I was still a child and we didn't necessarily have a youth group at the time. And I eventually just started singing the songs because, like I said before, I sing. It's like easy as breathing to me. So it was something that I've always enjoyed. So that's something I found myself doing in church a lot. And eventually, some of the adult leaders were like, hey, you're really good at singing, and I realize it's something you're really passionate about. You should consider joining the worship team. And at that time in my life, I was like, I don't want to say I was stuck up, but I honestly felt like singing was the only thing that I was good at, which I know now looking back, like that's absolutely crazy, but I had really low self-esteem, and that's something I still deal with from time to time, but anyway, like I felt like that was my only talent to offer, so of course I was like, yes, I'll be on the worship team. And eventually we ended up with a worship band, and I had never sang with an actual band before, and my sister at the time didn't play instruments, so it was such an incredible experience to have actual music behind you, and it was just, I don't even know how to describe it for me. It was an amazing experience. But as you could probably tell from how I'm talking, I was more focused on the me aspect. I wanted to show off my talent because, like I said, I believe that was the only thing I was good at and the only reason people wanted to hang out with me. So, with that being said, I didn't quite understand what worship was. I did see it as just a performance at that time. I was around 11, 12, 13, around that area. I was just becoming to know Jesus and who he was, but I didn't have that full understanding of why we worshiped. So, as my relationship grew with God, I began to understand like worship isn't just singing, it's about connecting your soul and your heart and giving back for all that He's given us in our lives. And it's so much more than just singing words on a screen. Like, if you're just doing that, you're missing so much. You're missing the whole big picture of worship and how it's supposed to be about God and not focused on ourselves. It's definitely not about your talent. It's about pouring your spirit out and having that emotional intimacy with God. And the more I did learn about Him, the more I did want to worship. I started to understand, like, oh, that's what these lyrics mean. Like, I understand what God did for me. And I couldn't help but get emotional during worship during this time because of all that He's done for me, His love for me, His grace, and so much more. I couldn't help it become emotional because of who He is. And the more I learned about Him, the more I started to connect. And at that point, I wasn't as worried about being pitchy. I wasn't always focused on how I sounded because I was singing from my heart, and I felt like that was the most important thing. So by that point, I was in my teen years, probably later teens. I would say like 15, 16, 17, like around there. And my pastor started mentioning that I was getting a little pitchier during worship. And I was like, okay, well, I'll try to practice a little bit more because obviously it should still sound good. But I was pouring my heart out. And when you get emotional, sometimes you get a little bit pitchier if you're familiar with singing. Or even when you're reading or talking. Like, if you start getting emotional, your voice starts wavering. It's just kind of natural. It's something that happens. And eventually, my microphone was turned off during worship. And my mom was the first to notice, along with other people. And the one thing that I felt that I was good at, that I had to offer God, was taken away in some way. And I felt embarrassed in a way because other people, like I said, began to notice, and I was leading worship for a long time at that point, so I was really, really upset. Ultimately, I started feeling like, you have to remember, I was still kind of young at this point. I know this isn't the case now, but I felt like if my worship wasn't even good enough for my pastor, how could God like my worship? And that was really hard to deal with as a little one, because you take everything so personally. And I had such a low self-esteem already, and at that point, I left worship, and I didn't even really sing that much anymore because I just felt like I wasn't good enough, and I didn't enjoy it because every time I did it, I felt like I was being critiqued. But during that time, I also had a realization that I'm more than just my talent. And even God sees that. He uses our talents, He uses our gifts for His good, but that doesn't define who I am in Him. He says, I'm beautifully and wonderfully made. I am created for a purpose, and all of these wonderful things. And it wasn't just limited to my worship, which I thought it was at the time because I thought that was all I was good at. But I ended up starting other stuff and realizing God had other plans for me during that time. So my family and I ended up switching churches due to a friend of ours starting a new church, and I was asked to lead worship again. After a lot of prayer and thinking, I agreed. I really liked this guy, and he was really, really nice. He is really, really nice. If you're listening to this, I know I know you know who you are. You are really nice. Don't come at me. So, my sister and I became the main worship leaders for 2 years or so. We would pick out the songs, pick out the keys, print everything out for everybody. and schedule practices. Like, we did the whole shebang pretty much. And honestly, I was really getting into it. I was once again just pouring my heart out in worship, and getting to pick out the songs made it so much more personal. And being able to pick out songs that go with the sermon and being able to lead people to the throne of God, like, that is such a privilege. If you are a worship leader, like, I hope people realize how much work you really put into what you do in your ministry. Because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, they just sing on Sundays. No, they don't just sing on Sundays. They have to pick out songs, they have to print out things, they have to schedule practices around so many adults' busy schedules. Like, there is so much that you have to do and handle. So if you're a worship leader listening to this, know that you are so appreciated, because it is definitely a lot to handle, and God sees you and God loves you for bringing people to his throne. It takes a special person to do that. So, sorry, I kind of went off on a ramble there, but I felt like that is definitely important to note. So, as I said, during this time, I started to feel my passion coming back. Although I was starting to have more anxiety when I was singing, it was getting to the point where I was dry heaving in the bathroom before services. I was having panic attacks before services because I just had this constant voice in my mind saying, "You're not good enough." And that wasn't just for worship at that point, it was in all aspects of my life. But the enemy was really coming after me during this time for worship. And eventually, my anxiety did get the best of me, and I became even more pitchy. Because if you start overthinking, if you're a singer, you can't help but get pitchy because you're too busy thinking about the pitch, and you're not able to connect to the songs in worship like you should be able to. And during that time, I wasn't chosen to sing solos anymore, which were given to my sister, which I don't want to put my sister down. If you're listening to this, I love you so much. You are so talented, and I know you know that. But I just felt really insecure back then, and I just felt bad that I wasn't like one of the main leaders anymore. I was just mostly singing with other people because I kept messing up. I kept overthinking. I kept being pitchy because I was just a nervous wreck. And once again, the church leader started noticing my pitchiness, and I was once again discouraged. Now, I want to make something clear. This church leader was nothing like what happened where my mic got turned off. It was nothing like that. But for those who don't know, I am high functioning autistic. And I am also a highly sensitive person, or HSP. If you haven't heard of that before, I highly recommend you look it up and do some research, because I guarantee that you probably have faced some people like this in your life, and knowing more about it could help you get more involved and understand more about who they are. But needless to say, I am a very sensitive person. I am still a very sensitive person, but I don't take things as personally as I did when I was a teenager. So that definitely took a hit to my self-esteem and what I had to offer to God. So eventually, I met my boyfriend during this time. I was around 16, and I was planning to move to Beckley in my early 20s. So I ended up leaving the worship team again. And ever since then, I have not joined another worship team. God has led me in a different direction. I love speaking now. I love encouraging people through words and being able to share hope and love through the gospel. That is where God is calling me now. But ultimately, this whole thing is about worship isn't a performance. It was never supposed to be. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't worry what you sound like. But ultimately, it depends on where your heart is at when you are worshiping. If you go off key occasionally, it's not the end of the world. Which I wish my little self would have known that. As long as you're singing from your heart and being able to connect with others that way, that is the big picture. So as I said before, I still don't sing on the worship team, but my passion has come back. I am beginning to sing all the time again. in the shower, in the car, at home while I'm cleaning. I'm always humming while I'm out and about. And my passion for music has never really left. And now that I've worked through those insecurities of not feeling good enough, I sing because I know that I am good enough for God. And he says, sing a joyful noise unto the Lord. He didn't say sing a beautiful voice, sing a perfect voice. He just wants to hear my voice praise him. And he deserves my praise. So for that reason alone, I will praise him, either through song or through my words, and nobody's going to stop me. So the main points of this is worship isn't a performance, it's surrender. A stage can be a dangerous place if you're not careful. It can easily turn into a performance because, like I said earlier, you have instruments, you have lights, you have audio technicians and visual technicians in the back, and it's really easy to lose perspective on what it's really about. You can start wondering who got the solo, who got scheduled this week, or whether people noticed your voice. But before you know it, worship isn't even centered on Jesus anymore. It's centered on what we can do instead of what he has done for us. So my ending thoughts here. I spent more than 10 years on a worship team. Looking back, I learned that anyone can sing a song, but not everyone is truly worshiping. There were moments I sang lyrics perfectly, but my heart wasn't involved in the worship, and I wasn't having that intimacy and that connection with God that you're supposed to have when you worship. And there's another thing I want to add here. Worship isn't just about the music and about the lyrics. Worship can be anything that you make it. It can be praying to God and thanking him for what he's done. It can be helping others that need help. That is definitely worshiping God. You're helping those who are in need, his children. It can be serving in a soup kitchen. It can be so many different things. It just depends on what God lays on your heart in that moment and how he has given you spiritual gifts to serve. So worship isn't just about the music, but for me, that is how I connect most with God. So that is like the whole point of this. Like, worship isn't just music, it is about your heart. And that's how it is with all worship, no matter how you worship God, how you choose to worship him. And whether you're in a ministry or whether you're not in a ministry, we are all called to worship. We are all called to be children of God. And I feel like that can be forgotten after a while. But going back, that was a little bit of a tangent. There were moments when my voice wasn't flawless, but I was completely surrendered to God in that moment. And those were the moments that changed me. So once again, what I want you to get from this is, even if you're on a worship team, even if you're the worship leader or worship pastor, yes, it's important for you to sound good. Because nobody really wants to listen to somebody who's totally off key, if we're being honest, but it's not all about that. And like I said earlier, I feel like you're missing the big picture if you're just allowing it to be that. You're missing that worship, that intimacy that you can't get just singing the lyrics on the screen, not allowing it to soak into your heart and pour out through your soul through song. So I think that is pretty much it. I thank you guys for listening and for learning a little bit more about me, and I hope that through this you will look at worship from a new perspective. And like I said, if you are a worship leader, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for your ministry and your heart and being able to lead people in song. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.